Our keynote speaker is known as the ethics guy. Michelle talked a little bit about that when she introduced NACM's ethics guy, Peter Kiefer. But this ethics guy writes ethics, character, and leadership articles for Fortune magazine and works with businesses and nonprofit organizations around the world to help them hire high-character employees. He also shows leaders how to make ethically intelligent choices at work and beyond. And that is exactly what you'll learn today in his presentation. You've probably seen him on the Today Show, Good Morning America, Fox News, Fox Business, CNN, CNBC, and where he looks at ethical issues in the news and explains why character is the missing link to excellence. His books include Ethical Intelligence, Is It Still Cheating If I Don't Get Caught? And the most recent book, which was just published, The Good Ones, 10 Crucial Qualities of High Character Employees. Dr. Weinstein has already signed the copy of The Good Ones here at the conference, and each of you will get a copy, and he would be happy at lunchtime to write a personal note. He might get a little bit of writer's cramp, so, but he would be happy to write a personal note in the book for you as well. So you've read his columns, and you've seen him on TV, so please now join me in welcoming, all the way from New York City, the professional ethics consultant and amateur spoon player. Are we going to see some of that today? The ethics guy, Dr. Bruce Weinstein.
You wake up one morning with the flu. Raise your hand if you would stay home and rest. Who would stay home and rest? You wake up one morning, okay, your name is?
Warner.
Warner. And why would you stay home and rest if you wake up with the flu?
You need to.
You need to. Thank you. Who would stay home and work? Stay home and work. Who would stay up? Right, Linda, why would you stay home and work?
Because I'm a workaholic.
Because you're a workaholic. Who would go to work but avoid socializing with people? Go to work but isolate yourself? Yes, sir. What is your name?
Roderick Wetland.
And why would you go to work but avoid socializing?
Probably because I'm a workaholic.
Because you're a workaholic. Even more of a workaholic. And who would go to work but socialize only with the people you don't like? Oh, a bunch of hands. All right. What would you do if this were your friend Tommy's new Facebook profile photo? Who would, and by the way, and on his bio, he mentions where he is a court administrator. Not your court, another court. Raise your hand if you would say to Tommy, you know, I think he should take that photo off of Facebook. Who would say that? Okay, Norman, why would you say that?
Because that's an unethical thing for him to do, to be on social media and associating the court with that kind of an appearance.
So it would be unethical for him to associate this sort of behavior with court?
Yeah, it demeans the integrity of the court.
It means the integrity of the court. Who would not say anything to Tommy about this? Who would not say anything to Tommy? Okay, over here. Yes, sir. Thank you. A for honesty. Why would you not say anything?
Actually, I have a question. Does Tommy identify himself as a court administrator on this social networking site?
Yes.
Then I would say something.
Okay. Right. Now, with the premise that he has identified himself as a court administrator, who would still not say anything to Tommy about that? Who would not say anything? You know, normally I say we're not being recorded so you can speak your mind, but in fact, we're not only being recorded, we're being streamed. Would anyone click the like button? Would anyone click the like button? Aha, a hand back there. Okay, thank you for that. What would you do if you're in line at Starbucks and you overhear two colleagues discussing confidential information about a case that is pending before the court right now? Who would say something to your colleagues about what you have observed? Who would say something to your colleagues about what you have observed? Yes, ma'am, you would say something. What would you say and why?
I'd just say you may not realize that people can overhear you're talking about confidential information.
Okay. And why would you do that?
Because it's confidential information.
Because it's confidential information. Who would not say anything to your colleagues about what you have observed? Who would not say anything? who would report them to the appropriate party? Yes, you would report them. Thank you. Excuse me. Why would you? Well, first of all, who would you report them to, and why?
Well, if I wasn't a court administrator, I would report them to my direct supervisor.
You'd report them to your direct supervisor because?
It's against the confidentiality policies of the court, and they're subject to disciplinary action.
Okay, because it violates the confidentiality rule of the court. And who would record your colleagues with your smartphone video camera and then post the clip on YouTube? So, yep. No? All right. So one afternoon, this fella is driving you to lunch. A colleague of yours at work is driving you to lunch, and at the stoplight, he pulls out his iPhone, begins checking emails. When the light turns, he resumes driving and continues checking his emails and texting. Raise your hand if you would say to your friend who is sitting right next to you, please don't do that. Who would say, please don't do that? All right, and why would you say, please don't do that?
Because I want to make it through the light.
Because you want to make it through the light. Alive. All right. Who would not say anything to your colleague about this? Who would not say anything to your colleague? Who would say, please pull over and let me out? You would say, please pull over and let me out, John, because?
I care about my life and his life, and that makes a really dramatic statement.
Okay, you care about your life and his, and it makes a dramatic statement. And finally, you're at work one afternoon, and you walk by a couple of colleagues who are arguing very passionately about a current presidential candidate. And they turn to you and say, what do you think of this presidential candidate? Raise your hand if you would tell them what you think about this presidential candidate. Yes, sir? Why would you join the discussion?
I think that your view is worth something. You should tell people about it. It's part of our democratic society.
Part of our democratic society. Who would say, you know what, I'm not comfortable talking about that at work. I'm not really comfortable talking about, okay, over here, ma'am, you would say, I'm not comfortable talking about, would you just pass this over? Why would you do that?
Because I tend to feel that way, that it's a very careful place to be about what you're talking about with the politics or other situations.
You're not comfortable about having that sort of discussion at work. And who would just change the topic? Who would just change the topic? Would anyone do that? Would anyone change the topic? I think I saw a hand up there. All right. What have we observed from this discussion so far? What have we observed? Just call it. Wait, let's hear from, and I want to get as many different people involved as possible, but since I heard, yes, did you speak up? Yeah, what have you observed?
There's a range of responses, and maybe a couple of them had a principle underneath, but seemed like many of them were just a personal opinion.
Okay, so basically your colleagues are cowards is what you're saying. It's what I heard. I'm just saying what I heard. No, range of opinions. Okay, she did not say that. She did not say that. I said it. Okay. So there's a range of opinions that were expressed here. Excuse me. All right. Yes. What else?
That the world of ethics has gotten really complicated, and it can be gray areas. We have to think about everything we say, every decision we make, interpretation, who's in what position, and so forth. So I think all of us have shown that it's a crapshoot.
It's a crapshoot. Okay. Thank you for that. Anything else that you've observed? Anything else that you've observed? Ma'am, will you just stand up and just tell us? Actually, just pass this along. I want to get everybody.
I think we had examples of situational ethics, and I think that's significant.
Say that again, please.
Wow, you didn't hear me. I think we had examples of situational ethics, and that's significant because depending on the situation and your relationship, you make ethical decisions or you opt out.
Thank you. I asked the same question in every situation. What was the question that I asked? What was the question that I asked? What would you do? What kind of a question is what would you do? It's a question about psychology, about how people are disposed to behave. But what if I asked a very different question? Because with what would you do, it's not surprising that there's a range of responses with 500 people in the room. And I suspect that people watching this on the streaming, even more range of opinions. But what if I asked, now, what would you do? What should you do? That's not a question about psychology. Now we're smack dab in the middle of ethics. So my question to you is, when we ask what should you do, what's the right thing to do, what's the honorable thing to do, how would a person of integrity in court management respond to these situations? Are some responses objectively better than others, yes or no? Yes. Now, how do we know which responses are better than others? Well, there are several ways, and we're going to be looking at all of them. One very important way is the NACM Model Code of Professional Conduct for Court Professionals. That's one way. I've also looked very carefully at your websites, at your state and local levels. The policies that are required of you in your jurisdiction also will tell you something about how to respond. And quite frankly, a lot of the principles that we're going to be talking about, we were taught when we were kids by our parents, by our teachers. If you attend a house of worship, they're certainly talked about there. But the principles we're going to be talking about in a moment are so basic that it may have been a while since you've thought about them or looked at them. So what I'd like to do is review these 5 very basic principles. We'll have some fun exercises at the table to see how they apply in court management in your professional and personal life. And then we'll end by revisiting the quiz, and I'll show how the principles point us in the right direction. So that's the game plan. I encourage you to get involved. I really want this to be of direct, immediate benefit to you, that you can put these things into practice today, this hour. If you have any questions, I'm going to be checking my live feed during the exercises. So if you don't want to raise your hand during the session, please send me an email at bruce@theethicsguy.com or tweet a question at The Ethics Guy. We want to make this fun and interactive for everyone. So I call these principles that we're going to look at the principles of ethical intelligence, because it turns out, as difficult as it is to put these principles into practice, doing so, striving to do it on a day-to-day basis, is not just the right thing to do. I'll show that it benefits you in very specific ways. You will experience today in this hour how these principles benefit you in a very tangible way. It's not just the right thing to do, it's a smart thing to do. Remember Wilford Brimley? Is anyone of a certain age like me, it's the right thing to do? Now he's selling diabetes ads. When he sold Quaker Oats, the right thing to do, he could be talking about these principles. Now, I have a PhD in ethics, but with a concentration in medical ethics. These principles, actually, I'm adapting from a classic book in medical ethics, but we'll see that it applies far beyond medicine. I just want to give credit where credit is due. But let's start with the most basic principle of all. Do no harm. So you see that phrase, what group of people immediately comes to mind? Doctors. Anybody else? Nurses, clinical social workers, pharmacists, dentists. We know everyone in healthcare is told first, do no harm. My question to you is, does this principle apply to anyone else besides physicians, nurses, clinical social workers? Yes or no? Yes. Who else does it apply to? I asked a group of 8th graders in Bronxville, New York. Anyone here from the great state of New York? Thank you. I asked a group of 8th graders, who does do no harm apply to? And one student raised his hand and he said, hippies. All right. And his friend raised his hand and said, no, it applies to vegetarians. And then the teacher said, it applies to police officers. And I agree that at the most basic level, physicians, nurses, all healthcare providers, hippies, vegetarians, tree huggers, police officers should be bound by this principle. But let me ask you this. Can you think of anybody else that the do no harm principle applies to? Anybody else? Whoa, wait a minute. This is a pretty bold statement. Who does it apply to?
Everyone.
Including court managers?
Probably.
Probably. Well, in fact, I know that there's at least one jurisdiction in this country that specifically talks about the do no harm principle. Who's here from the great state of New Mexico? All right, look at that. So in the 5th Judicial District Court, are you from that court? Well, I just found this on the internet. At the very beginning of the Code of Conduct, employees must not engage in sexual harassment. That's a direct application of the do no harm principle. We're going to see how this principle applies in the quiz, but let me ask you this. What's one thing that you might do, intentionally or not, that might harm the profession of court management? And I want to get as many different people involved as possible. What's one thing that you could do that might harm? And since I'm sensing a little bit of discomfort, to bribe you ethically, and this does not violate the NACM code for giving gifts. I have a little sticker with the 5 points of this talk that will be the talk of the town if you take this home. So with that in mind, I used to give out books and it was costing me a lot. And then I discovered that, you know, if you give someone a 10-cent sticker, like, you'd be surprised what people will do. So with that in mind, now nobody's going to want it. What's one thing that you might do that, yes, okay, see, what did I say? What's one thing you could do that might violate the do no harm?
If you commit a crime.
If you commit a crime. It doesn't matter what crime.
Well, especially if it's a crime that your court adjudicates.
Especially if it's a crime that your court adjudicates. Here's your sticker. Thank you, sir. Anybody else? What's another thing you could do? I'm just dying to give these away. Yes, ma'am. Okay. What's another thing you could do?
Discuss court cases in the public.
Discuss court cases in public. Absolutely. Yes, there was a hand over here. Yes, ma'am.
I was inside the confidentiality of your court.
You still get a sticker. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Over here from the great state of New Mexico.
Steal money.
Steal money. I like your bolo tie, by the way. One more. Yes, I thought I saw a hand. Yes, ma'am. Just stand up and. Hang on. Let's get.
I just think if you treat your patrons with total disrespect and not paying attention to what they do, that even does more harm than if you commit a crime.
Okay, so disrespect. Thank you very much. There's a corollary. If you're following the handout that I provided, you'll see there's a space to write a corollary to the do no harm principle, because all these things that you just talked about, committing a crime, stealing money, all you have to do to put this into practice is just not do those things. But sometimes you're called upon to take action, as we'll see in the quiz in a moment. So the corollary is to prevent harm, These principles are not specified as such in any of the codes of ethics that I looked at. I looked at a lot. These are the basic foundations, the framework for everything you do, and at least in the state of California, some of the things that you do outside of work, as I'll talk about in a moment. But the second principle takes us further, because it's not enough just not to hurt people, right? You're called upon in court management, we're all called upon really, to make things better. I'd like you to go around the table now and tell one another one thing that you've done recently that has made things better for someone. Just take a moment, go around the table and tell one another one, and also please identify yourself and who you represent. Thank you.
Several complaints about not receiving the emails, citizens requesting resets and things like that. They responded to the top. So actually I'm 4 days into it. Hey.
Well, what did y'all say?
I discussed how I received a new assignment to reorganize the mail division, and I'm 4 days into it. So what, 4 months into it? 4 months?
We have implemented a jury.
Okay, I'm really hankering to give out some more stickers. Who would like to brag? Who would like to brag on one of your table mates? All right. Who would like to brag on one of their table mates? Something, a really good story that you heard. Okay, over here. Thank you. I appreciate the participation. Now it's time to give respect to your colleague over here. Okay, we're going to respect our colleague, Renee.
Yes. Howard from Atlantic City, New Jersey, tells us that he had an attorney in his court that stole $8 million from the elderly. So he implemented a new guardianship program.
I was going to say, that's not the make things better part, the stealing of the 8 million. Okay, so thank you very much for that. And here's one for you for speaking up. Thank you for that. Yes, thank you. Who else has got a good make things better? I heard a lot of chatter. Yes, sir.
And we have a young lady over here who is a problem-solving court professional. So we know about problem-solving courts and how they help people in a medical model.
Great, excellent. So here's one for you and one for your colleague. Right? One more good, really good make. And you know what? It can apply outside of work. That's okay. Yes, over here.
Hi, I'd like to brag on Lori from Washington, D.C. She indicated that she came up with some specific advice to give to her court professionals when dealing with customers so that you don't get angry, so that you give good advice and be specific and help them along the way.
I love it. Thank you so much. All right, thank you for that. Who took a plane to get here? Please raise your hand. Who took a plane to get here? Who's been on a plane before? All right. At the beginning of the flight attendant says, in the event of the loss of cabin pressure, oxygen mask will drop down. And if you're with a small child, you put the mask on the child first, and then you look after yourself. Because it's very important to, no, you put the mask on the child first. What are you saying? You put it on yourself when you're with a 2-year-old? That's really selfish. I'm from New York City. I thought my friends were a tough crowd. Why are we instructed to put the mask on ourselves even before we put it on our children? Yes, ma'am, over here. Okay. Why would we be instructed to do this? Please help me.
Because the oxygen will, if you don't put it on yourself, you can't help the child because you're going to pass out. If you don't put the oxygen on yourself, you're going to pass out and you can't help the child.
And your name is? Sarah. What Sarah just said is extremely profound, and I cannot emphasize enough how profound this is for your work and your personal life in court management. If you don't take care of yourself, you're in no position to help other people. And the reason I believe that ethics is such a turnoff to so many people is because it often is focused on what? What word is the word ethics almost always associated with in the news? Violation. So it has that negative link. But also, if you look at most of the codes of ethics in court management across the country, and I looked at a lot of them, they almost always begin with the following: thou shalt not, don't do this, don't do that. And I understand that's certainly a point, right? Don't break your promises, don't tell lies, don't steal money. But what Sarah has shown us is that if we turn it around and say, ethics is not just about not doing things to other people, it's also about taking care of ourselves, enriching our own lives, making sure that we're caring for ourselves as well as other people. I do believe more people would find this an exciting thing to think about. And we're going to show in a moment what's in it for you. Now it's just a concept, but we're going to show in a moment why it really makes sense. If you were just to ask yourself, as Oprah might, what's my best life? How can I live the best possible life? Forget about other people for a moment. It's still living according to these principles. But again, we're going to do an exercise that will really drive this home. Number 3, respect others. If you look at the NACM Model Code of Conduct, again, you see very early on the following statement. This is in the very first canon, and then the subcanon 1.4. A court professional shall treat litigants, co-workers, and all others interacting with the court with respect. What does that mean in practical terms? Well, in practical terms, it comes down to 3 simple rules. Number 1, the rule of confidentiality. And I took a look at the Minnesota Judicial Branch policy. And Article 2, who is here from the great state of Minnesota? Welcome. See, Minnesota people are so nice, she didn't even want to raise her hand and brag about it. At least I didn't see it. In any case, Article 2 in your code, does this sound familiar? Employees shall not disclose to any unauthorized person confidential information. That makes sense. And of course, this is written in other jurisdictions as well. What we don't know yet is whether you're obligated to do anything if you observe somebody else violating confidentiality. But we'll look at that in a moment. A second way that you, as a court management professional, show respect for others in your daily life is by telling people the truth. Now listen to this. Who's here from California? Fantastic. Look at that turnout. Look at that turnout. So I took a look at the Code of Ethics in California. Listen to this. Tenet number 2. It's so subtle, the profundity of this might wash over you, but I'll read it twice. Demonstrate the highest standards of honesty in all of our professional and personal dealings. I'll say it again. Tenet 2 of the Code of Ethics. If you're a court employee in California, you are required to commit yourself to demonstrating the highest standards of honesty in all of your professional and personal dealings. What stands out in that? Personal dealings. Now, this is fantastic. Not only are you expected to be honest as a court management professional on a date. Do you love it? Now, when I was dating, let's get down to brass tacks here. There was this woman, and I'm a sucker for women from the UK. So this woman said she's from the UK, and there was a really great picture. And I showed up, and I didn't see anyone who looked like the woman in the picture. I did see one woman who looked like her mother, however. Now, there's nothing wrong with we're all getting older. That's fine. But what I was troubled by was the outright lie of the photograph she used to lure me in. And I asked her, when was that photo taken? 10 years ago. Well, you know, you're going to find out eventually. But the cool thing is, in California, if you're a court management professional, that would be wrong. It's nothing to do. I don't know outside of California, but in California, you can't do that. So let's go in the other direction. And I want you to, now here's the fun exercise we're going to do. I want you to think about a time where you had to tell someone the cold, hard truth at work. And it wasn't easy, but you found the courage to do it. And something good happened as a result, okay? A time when you had to tell someone the truth at work, and it wasn't easy for you to do it, but you did it and something good happened. Take a moment and we'll give out some more stickers. Go.
Good. Y'all just chomping at the bit, ready to go. Fire somebody, better let them know. Not gonna make it. No hard feelings. It's them or me. If I continue to co-sign and let you ride along with me, you're only gonna bring me down, and then they ain't gonna want to hear being a director. So. Not really proud of it, but I got smiles and things too.
I'm just using these. Okay. I'm taking this one. We'll have a good time.
Thank you so much.
We're having a good time. I'm really enjoying it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Oh. Woo. Ladies and gentlemen, who's got a good truth-telling story? Who's got a good truth-telling story? Everybody's pointing to this woman, so I'm going to go over here. All right. May I? Do you mind? Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Hi. Can I have my sticker first? Because you didn't give her a sticker, and I just want to make sure I get a sticker. Okay. Well, we had what we were talking about. Sometimes it's difficult when you have to tell a coworker or an employee of yours or subordinate about hygiene issues. And we had, Dana here had a programmer who was particularly odoriferous, and had to instruct him, but also work with him on what can we do for you. We fog in the area. I mean, it was pretty bad. And actually, I don't really think he took any steps to do anything. So he didn't work out, thank God, because I think we were going to lose people.
So the good thing is you fired him, is what I'm hearing. Okay, all right. For all of you old timers like me, remember that commercial in the 60s where you had to spin the Scope bottle and the person had to tell someone else they had what was euphemistically called halitosis? Bad breath. Yeah, this one comes up a lot, the BO problem. Anybody else? Yes. Who? Oh, okay. Stephanie's going to run over there with you. And I'll pass along the sticker, assuming this is a good story. Ma'am, would you pass this sticker over? Yeah.
So I shared that I'm a huge proponent of the compliment sandwich. It's something I kind of always keep in my skill set so that if there's something I need to share with you, I can kind of couch it with something on one end and something on the other end so that there can be a positive outcome with us so you don't walk away feeling like you've been, battered. And so it really doesn't matter what the situation is, but I've gotten to use it, I said, on everything from my kids and dogs and neighbors and husband and coworkers, and it's something that helps all the time. But the amazing part is when you kind of couch it, people come back and they say, "Oh, thank you for sharing that information with me," because they feel like they've won as well. And so, my question to you is you can find something good about everybody, right? Even if it's their grammar, right? I mean, there's something positive.
Remember, I'm from New York, so I have a hard time with that. But yes, generally speaking, I agree.
So then something good came out of telling the truth, but by couching it on kind of both ends.
I like it. And your name is?
Susan.
Susan, we're going to actually come back to that technique when we revisit the quiz. One more good truth-telling story? Okay. A third way that we show respect for people is by keeping our promises. And I don't know about you, but I have a tendency to overpromise and then, unfortunately, underdeliver. Now, when you think about it, why, when you trace your steps back, why do you sometimes make promises that you're not prepared to keep? I was giving a talk in Quebec City. Anyone here from Quebec? Fantastic place. A woman came up after the talk and told me she was from this national organization and would I be willing to write an article for her magazine. And I was so excited. I said yes right on the spot, without even thinking, to check my calendar. And it turned out when the deadline came around, I wasn't able to do it. And so now I'm on her list of people not to contact. But it came from a good place. I wanted to help her. I wanted to please her. I wanted her to like me, all these things. Some maybe are more noble reasons than others. But I wasn't able to live up to the promise. And so this aspect of respecting others means keeping promises that we make and not making promises we're not prepared to keep. The fourth one should be of particular interest to those of you who worked on the NACM Model Code of Conduct, because every single canon in the NACM Code is a variation on this theme. For example, it prohibits you from hiring family members to work for you. What's the problem with hiring family members? I mean, what could be better than working with your son or daughter, right? Has anyone ever had a negative experience? I don't want to out anyone, but what I will tell you is when you get the book, The Good Ones, you'll see in the chapter on fairness There's a story about a construction CEO from Burleson, Texas, who hired his son. And in the construction world, it actually is an industry that's passed down from parent to child. So that makes sense. But what it turned out is that Chris's son, Matt, had a hard time separating boss from father. He always saw his father as his father, not as his boss, and ultimately he had to be let go. So, in terms of fairness, the NACM code says it's fine to obviously, enjoy your time with your family members, but not at work. And the final principle of ethical intelligence is easily the one that you appreciate the most when you're on the receiving end. And it is the principle that exhorts us to be caring, to be kind, to be compassionate, or some might put it, to be loving. There's a fellow named Joel Manby, the CEO of Hershen Family Entertainment, which owns Dollywood and the Harlem Globetrotters. He wrote a really cool book called Love Works, and his entire company is founded, well, it's founded on Christian principles in his case, but he talks specifically, you don't have to be Christian to work there, but what you do have to have is apparently a limitless supply of love for other people, for yourself, for the customers you're serving. And so he's unapologetic in using the term love in his code of ethics. But you don't have to, use, if you're not comfortable with that in a business context, this word works perfectly fine. Since we're in Kentucky, who likes bluegrass music? Who likes bluegrass music? Who likes rock and roll? Who likes classical? Who's not having a very good day? Who's not having a very good day? Did I see a hand? Who's not having a very good day? I really need someone to pretend. I know if you, okay, the three of you, yes, could you please come up? All right. And actually, I'd be willing to bet they're not pretending. And there's no harm in having it. Look, there's no harm in having a bad day. Come on up here. Yes, you did. Yes, you. Oh, you're having a. Okay, well, are you all having a great day? Well, have you ever had a bad day in your life? Let's take us back to the horrible day that you once had. Come on up here, please. Your name is?
Renee.
And you are?
Deborah.
And you are?
Not here.
Oh, okay. Well, you may say that, but you're being streamed live all over the world. Now, thinking back to that horrible day that you had, maybe, was it recently, within the last week? Have you had maybe an off day?
Made us do the boot camp.
When David made you do the boot camp.
Yeah.
So, let's assume for the sake of argument, they're not feeling that great right now. Have you ever worked with someone who isn't feeling really great at work? Okay, so now I see some heads nodding. So, let's turn this around. Assuming that these are your coworkers who are not having a good day, let's give them the loudest standing ovation of all time for 30 seconds. Come on, stand up and let them know that you're, come on, and really let them have it. Come on, you can do better than that. Come on, more. Woo! Come on, man. Okay. Please be seated. Now take a look at their body language. Do they look any, now they were looking pretty good before. Well, how do they look now? A lot happier. Take a quick survey of the room right now, please. Take a look around the room. What do you see? What do you feel? Is it any different from 2 minutes ago? What were you doing 2 minutes ago before I asked you to stand up? I'll tell you because I scanned the audience. You were asleep. I don't blame you. It's early. Some of you were, it looked like you were playing Candy Crush from what I could tell. And I'll bet everybody else was going through the to-do list of all those things you have to attend to when you get home. And I don't blame you. But what did you do when I asked you to stand up and give them a round of applause? You turned all of your attention in being caring for your colleagues. And what happened? When you saw that it paid off, how did that make you feel? It made you feel better. This, my friends, is the only take-home message you need from this talk. Why should you care about avoiding harming people, making things better, respecting others, being fair, being caring. It's the right thing to do, but it turns out it makes you feel better. It enriches your life. Isn't that a good reason to think about how important this is in our daily life? Let's review the 5 principles. Number 1, do no harm. Number 2, make things better. And by the way, if you didn't get a sticker and you want one, I have plenty for everybody. So when I personalize your book, I'll give you one then. Respect others is number 3. And remember, the 3 rules associated with respect to others are keeping confidential things confidential, telling the truth, and keeping promises, being fair, giving to others their due, and finally, being caring. So let's review the quiz. Waking up with the flu. Which of the 5 principles is obviously at stake when you wake up with the flu and you wonder, should I go to work or not? Do no harm. How did you get the flu? You got the flu because somebody else didn't care about the do no harm principle and was in front of you at Starbucks and was hacking and sneezing and exchanging money with the barista, or better yet, the barista was sick. You like that? You like getting food from a server who's an open, anyway, that's how you got it. So isn't it time to break the cycle by staying home and not infecting other people? But there's a less obvious reason why the smart money is on staying home, not working, staying home and resting. What other principle might apply here? Think about the oxygen masks, the caring principle, making things better for yourself. Doesn't it matter? I mean, shouldn't your own well-being figure into the moral calculus? Absolutely. The ethically intelligent thing to do is to stay home so you can protect other people from harm. Remember, prevent harm, corollary to the first principle, and to care for yourself. You're important too. You count too. We move on to your friend. I believe we're going to move on to your friend who has a great taste in beer, and that's about it. All right. Yes or no? Could this hurt your friend Tommy's career as a court administrator? All right, now I want to get back into the audience. How might this hurt your friend Tommy's career right now? Would anyone like to? Stephanie, you're right here.
I was concentrating on running the microphone.
Okay. How might this hurt Tommy's career as a court administrator if this photo becomes well known? And yes, ma'am. Thank you. Janet?
He might not get the promotion he just competed for.
He might not get the promotion. And you know what else? Your honoree today, Peter Kiefer, wrote this really cool column, A Question of Ethics, in the summer of 2010. And it's all about what happens if you're hiring people and you come across this sort of thing. Mr. Kiefer, would you mind talking a little bit about this column and specific, not about this guy, but how this creates problems for people when you're hiring?
I know this guy. You were that guy. So the problems that this would incur? Well, the problems would incur in a couple of different directions. One is this certainly goes to the potential integrity of your candidate. 2, as Norman Meyer has brought out from time to time, it also goes to the veracity of the social media itself. Do you trust the social media? And does the individual, what's his name? Mike? Tommy. Does Tommy know you're looking at the social media? I mean, a lot of courts tell me they don't look at Facebook when they're going to be hiring. They do. They call folks on their reference sheets, but they will not go on Facebook. They're not going to go on Twitter or Tumblr because they don't want to see this sort of stuff. And then that brings up the question of you hire Tommy and you then later have somebody find this and go, what were you thinking? So that's a number of issues.
Thank you, Peter. So if you really care, now let's assume this is in the close friend category rather than the acquaintance category, where you really do care about what happens to him. To avoid the kind of problems that Peter's talking about, wouldn't it make sense to say, I think you should take it down and explain how it's in his own interest to do it? He's probably not aware of that. I think he's obvious he's not thinking about the consequences. And he might tell you to get lost or words to that effect, but it might resonate with him and he might take it down later. Doing nothing or clicking the like button is probably not the best solution of the 3. Did you want it? Yes, ma'am? Stephanie?
I
I think it's important to encourage him not to do that in the future because people can't unsee something like this. I mean, it's...
And that's why I don't show this over breakfast. By the way, you might be wondering right now, oh my gosh, what's on the internet about me? After this session, go to Google Images and type in your name. And yes, that party from high school, someone posted it. There's a company called Reputation.com. I don't own any stock in this, but their whole business is focused on erasing the electronic paper trail that people leave. But it's impossible to get rid of them all. So thank you very much for that comment. Overhearing the confidential information. Our friend, I'm sorry, your name with the compliment sandwich. What was your name again, ma'am? Susan. You might also be familiar with the term the praise sandwich. When you encounter someone revealing, actually, before we get to that, how might the revelation of confidential information cause harm? You're not doing it, someone else is. How might that harm someone or something? Let's look at that, because that's really what all this hinges on. Why should we even care about it? Wait, let's hear about this. Yes, sir?
The public won't trust us if we blow their private cases all over a supermarket.
The public won't trust. When you say us, who's included in us?
Judges, court officials, court employees, public employees.
Is it a harder case if it's two judges doing this? You know, someone with power over you. Is it hard? Would it be harder for you to act? Maybe a little, but not impossible. So let's look at Susan's compliment sandwich. Let's take a little closer look at that. It's a very handy way of giving criticism that is so warm and wonderful and Oprah-esque, the person doesn't even know they're being criticized. 3 elements. You begin by saying something that is praising, flattering, sincere. For example, if it's Jane and John who are doing this, you might say, Jane and John, I wanted to let you know that I really enjoy working with you. Now, assuming that that's true, how will that affect Jane and John? How will that affect them? They'll want to hear more. Now you stick it to them, okay? But not in a way that feels like criticism. Because if you say, you should know better, you're violating the NACM code, blah, you're right, but the defenses will go up and the nasty language will come out. But if instead of using you language, you should know better, if you say something like, I couldn't help but notice, and in fact, you said that, ma'am, when we were doing the initial quiz, I couldn't help but notice I could overhear you, and I wonder if I could hear you, maybe other people could too. That's criticism. You just haven't said anything that really sounds or feels like criticism. Then that's the criticism, and then you end with the praise. And I just thought you would want to know. I know that I would want to know if I were in your situation, and you're 2 really good people, and I hope that you'll take that to heart. Praise, criticism, praise. Almost always effective. But let's say that they tell you to get lost, or words to that effect, or they say thank you very much, and you encounter them doing that again. Would you have a right to notify someone else? Would you have an obligation to notify someone else? I presented this similar case in the National Guard in South Carolina. And they said, this is not an ethical dilemma for us because we're required to report this. We're required to report this to our commanding officer, and if we don't, we can be discharged from the Guard. But none of the codes that I looked at had such strict measures for court managers. In other words, if you don't do anything, that you'll be punished. I didn't see that. It might exist, but I didn't see that. But just because it's not in there doesn't mean that the right thing to do is not using the praise sandwich and then, if necessary, to call it to someone else's attention. But that, I don't think, should be the first response. It's too harsh of an initial response. This guy, this jerk, I say that lovingly because it's me. And just so you know, the car was not moving. This is Iceland. There are a few sheep around. There are no people. This was posed for your benefit. But let me ask you this. If you say, oh, and by the way, I said you're driving with this person. You're right next to, what do you call the seat right next to me, where you're sitting? What do you call that seat? The passenger seat? I call it the organ donor seat, because that's what you'll be pretty soon. Are you more likely to be involved in a car accident if you're talking on the phone and driving? Yes or no? By a factor of what? 4. What if you're texting and driving? Then 23 times more likely to be. So yes, you are soon to be fodder for somebody else's body if you don't take action. Now, I respect what the gentleman said. He would say pull over, and I've done that before. It's an extreme response, but it does work. But simply saying something like, please give it to me, I'll take a look at the messages, rather than saying nothing. I can't tell you, every single time I get a call, or make a call for that example, the first thing I say to the person is, are you behind the wheel? Yes, but I'm using a hands-free device. Turns out that doesn't matter. It's still distracted driving, so I will say to the person, let's talk when you're not behind the wheel. And they might grumble or a little something like that, but people actually appreciate the fact that you cared for them. Finally, the political issue. All right, who thinks the Beatles are better than the Rolling Stones? Who thinks the Rolling Stones are better than the Beatles? Who thinks it's all a bunch of noise? All right, so let's say that we're all having a discussion about Beatles versus the Stones. A third of you say the Beatles are better, a third say the Stones, and a third say, I don't like any of that nonsense. At the end of the discussion, how do we feel about one another? Well, if I like the Beatles better, I might say, okay, the Stones fans, you just don't quite appreciate the genius of the Fab Four. But that's about as much as I would say. I wouldn't say that you're mistaken or wrong, but if we're talking about presidential candidates or a hot-button political topic, let's say that you're on one side of the fence and I'm on another. We're having a discussion about this at work. Would you say I have just a different point of view or that I'm mistaken? When we're talking about politics, you will probably say, no, Bruce is wrong, and it's a very short leap psychologically to Bruce is wrong, to Bruce is an idiot, he's a jerk, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and will that help or hinder our working relationship? The thing about talking about politics at work is in most cases it has nothing to do with what you're working on, and that's why it's not a smart thing to do. Politics is one of the 4, what I call the fearsome foursome. 4 topics, 4 issues that are just not a good idea to talk about at work. What are the other 3? Religion, sex, and the most sensitive of all, how much you made last year. People are more willing to tell you about their belief in God or their bizarre sexual fantasies than they're willing to tell you about how much they made last year. And if you ask someone, now I got shut down when I was a professor and I asked my assistant, so who did you vote for? She looked at me and said, it's none of your business. She was absolutely right. And I thought, why would I even think of asking her that? And, you know, kudos to her for shooting me down, for keeping me in my place. She was absolutely right. It's just not a smart thing to do. Maybe before work, maybe after work, but not at work. So to make this as helpful as it can be, I will ask you to please consider, I'm sorry, the most important part of the session. Don't let me forget this. These principles are completely worthless unless we put them into practice. So I want you to think right now, this is the last exercise, I think you'll really like this. Think about someone in your life who's alive to whom you have rarely, if ever, said the following words. Thank you. Someone in your life you have not thanked recently or at all. Okay? Now I want you to think about a message that has 3 elements. Thank you, or I'm grateful. 2, a specific thing they've done that has enriched your life. And 3, how that person has enriched your life. All right? Thinking about this person, thank you, how they've benefited you, and how it has enriched your life. Now I want you to open your phone. If you're not already on the internet, I believe it's free Wi-Fi. I want you to text or call or email that person and tell them those 3 things. Thank you because of what you did, and this is how it enriched my life. Please take a moment to do that. I guarantee this is really going to make your day. Please take a moment to do that. And then raise your hand when you get a response. Okay, we're right on top.
Stand when you do that.
Right over here. Please raise your hand when you get a response. Anybody have a response yet? Oh, Peter Kiefer. I wonder who you wrote. Would you mind telling us who you wrote and how they responded and what you said?
I wrote to my beautiful bride, and then she wrote back, says, "Who is this?" No, she said, she said, "You've enriched my life too."
I should have warned you that when you send this kind of note, you'll get one of the following responses. Are you having an affair? Are you drunk? What did I do wrong? Because people are not used to hearing this. You know, Omar Sharif just died. And whenever someone famous dies in the news, you know, Whitney Houston or Philip Seymour Hoffman, whoever it is, you hear all these lovely sentiments being expressed afterwards, right? And I always wonder, did they tell the person that when they were alive? Why wait a day to tell someone how much you care about them, just as Peter did? So thank you for that. I will ask you, though, because I'm always looking for ways of improving this, I'd like to know from you what worked in this hour and what might be called, as we say in corporate America, an opportunity for development. No one has flaws or weaknesses anymore, or failings or shortcomings. It's an opportunity for development. Fine. If you let me know by midnight tonight what worked and what I could improve upon, I will send you an audiobook. If you write to me tomorrow or at 12:01, I will be very grateful for what you say, but I will not send you an audiobook. Help me to help other members of this fine organization and others. So let's keep in touch. I really hope this will be the beginning, not the end of a dialogue. Let's link in, tweet, Facebook, Pinterest, but now I've saved the best for last. Okay, ready for this? Now, Michelle at the beginning said, look, let's get engaged. Let's get the word out about NACM. Enough good people across the country. What were there, 31,000 courts? We need more engagement. It's great, but we need even more. So here's what we're going to do. Remember last year at Oscars how Ellen DeGeneres did this selfie? That we're gonna beat that one. Ready? What we're gonna do the best selfie. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do is the following. I want you to please stand up. Okay. Let's get this going. And on the count of 3, yes, stand up if you can. We're gonna say NACM rocks, all right? For all the people who really should be here, okay? On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. NACM rocks! I'm sorry, but a kindergarten could do better than that one. I'm sorry, that was really weak. Let's do it, come on. I know you've got it in you, okay? Ready? Now we're gonna go around the room and we're gonna say on the count of 3, NACM rocks. Ready? 1, 2, 3. NACM rocks! Thank you very much. That's it. We're done. Woohoo!